Okay. All right. Also, we're going to go ahead and start recording this for YouTube. So if you don't want to show up on YouTube later, not that literally anyone's watching but your classmates, you're more than welcome to put up your video cutoff thing. But again, it's just your classmates. So. All right. We have a thick 5-page worksheet to go through. So we're going to go ahead and get started. This will probably be a little bit faster paced than usual. I probably will not have as much time to sort of re-explain or categorize information. So, yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. Number 1, what are the 5 main animal clades? Which belongs to Eumetazoa? Which ones belong to Bilateria? Fire, what'd you have for this one? I think you're on mute.
Thanks. We got Porifera, the Cnidarians, Lophotrochozoa, the E1, ECDY.
Yeah, Ecdysozoa.
All right, you got that. And then Deuterostomia were our 5.
Which ones belong to Eumetazoa?
Everything but the Porifera.
Mm-hmm. Right? And which ones belong to Bilateria?
Everything but Cnidarians.
Yes. Everything except for Cnidarians and Porifera.
Okay.
And then remember, y'all, Eumetazoa, that means what? True tissues, which is everybody except for the sponges, the Porifera. And then Bilateria, what do we know about Bilaterians?
They're bilateral?
Yeah, they have bilateral symmetry, which means if they don't fit in that category, like Cnidarians and Porifera, then they must have radial symmetry, or bilateral symmetry.
They have 2 openings for their column, right?
The coelom?
Coelom, sorry.
Yeah, I know. All of the words, also all of the words on here are super whack. Literally just say whatever. I will probably try and try to say what I've heard is correct, not to correct y'all, but just so you hear it in case you hear someone else talking. Some professors get really uppity if you say it wrong, but they're long, confusing words. Who really cares? Awesome. Thanks, guys. All right, number 2, phylum Porifera. Who would like to describe them?
I can.
Okay.
So they're filter feeding, and they have choanocytes, which create the water current, and they also have amoebocytes, which can pretty much do a bunch of different things, but mainly they're like digestion, I think, and stuff like that. They can help with that-ish. I don't know. Leah might have something better. We said they don't have any tissues, and they have a spongiocele,
yeah.
Yeah, something like that. And it's like the hole in the middle that filters the water, and the osculum is the hole at the end where the filtered water exits, and that's what I have.
Boom. Yeah, that's awesome. If you just imagine, it's kind of like a big-looking pineapple, but if someone lopped off the top, and the choanocytes are spinning to pull water into it, and then as the water's coming into the spongiocele, which is like the big space, it brings food so that the sponge can consume it. And then the amoebocytes, yeah, they can just change into a lot of different things. Just remember the cyte, C-Y-T-E, that's like cell. So amoebocytes are just amoebo cells and choanocells. So anytime you see the cyte, you can think of this is some sort of cell. I may or may not know what it is, but at least you know it's a cell. And then, yeah, there's an osculum instead of a mouth or an anus. It kind of does both at once. So, sweet. Okay, thanks, Jenna. Number 3, describe Cnidarians or Cnidarians, however you prefer it. Who would like to explain 3? Thanks, Sam, for volunteering.
Oh, that's I did not do number 3. I have number 4 though.
Okay. Would you like to phone a friend and pick someone else to do 3?
Haley? I think I saw her raise her hand.
Oh, okay, sweet. Yeah, also, sorry, I can't see all of y'all if you want.
You're good. And I can do the Cnidarians, or however you pronounce them. And they have the how do you pronounce the cnidocytes or whatever they're called?
Cnidocytes. I think most of the C's are just silent.
Oh gosh, this is why I can't. Cnidocytes, and they contain the whatever those things are.
Nematocysts.
Cells. Thank you. They're the stinging cells that they use to either capture or stun their prey and then eat those. They also have one entrance and one exit that they can use for their digestive tract, and then they are diablastics, meaning they have 2 kinds of tissues. and they have true tissue.
Nice, yeah. Thank you. And a couple questions for everyone. Is the sessile stage the motionary or stationary one?
Stationary.
Stationary. Think S for sessile, S for stationary.
Medusa.
And then what about the motile form? That one is,
Medusa.
yeah, it's the Medusa. It's the mobile. And mobile sounds almost the exact same. Yeah, so Medusa is another name for the motile form, which is the mobile form. And then you have the sessile, also called the polyp form, which is like the stationary one. Think of like a polyp that you could get in your large intestine, like a cancerous polyp. It's a single stationary thing that grows and stays there. So it's kind of the same. Polyps grow on the ocean floor or wherever else where they're at. And then yes, no nematocysts are within the cnidocytes. And then they're for capture of prey or for self-defense. Both of those apply. Cool. Thank you, Haley. Number 4, what's going on with all of these worms? Compare and contrast this absurd volume of wormies. Viraj, would you like to take a whack at this one?
Sure.
You guys had some good answers earlier.
Okay. So the flatworms, this is part of that clade, which most of these are part of that clade that starts with an L, lofo. I can't pronounce the whole thing, except for nematodes, I'm pretty sure. So you have flatworms, exactly, which are parasitic and are drosoventrally flats. They also have this thing, it's like for excreting, it's like outer, like, I think like membrane called like the Pterophrida or something. I know it's like
protonephridia.
Protonephridia. I'm gonna butcher all these words. I'm sorry.
Oh, you go for it. They're all such a mess.
And then under flatworms, you also have the tapeworms and the planarians. So the tapeworms, they attach into our intestine and they only target vertebrates. They have a scolex which latches onto our intestine, and then they also they lay their eggs, and those eggs leave through feces. I'm pretty sure.
Yep. Yeah.
For the planarians, you have eye spots, or sensory eye spots, and then you also have nerve nets, and they're also free living. And I'm pretty sure that's about it for them. Annelidids are the fused rings, and there are sort of two types of annelidids. There's the Urantia and then the Sedentaria. So the Urantia, that's categorized by its many chaetae, or how do you pronounce it?
Yeah, chaetae. I'm not really sure.
Okay. And then the Sedentaria is less mobile than the Urantia. And then you have the nematoda, which I'm pretty sure it's under the clade Ecdysozoa. It's the first one, and then they're roundworms. They have a thrashing motion, and they're parasites for both vertebrates and plants. And then they also, one of the main organisms that she highlighted was the Trichinella spiralis. And then I forget the other name of the organism that she put in the slide.
Yeah. Dude, nice. That's huge. Thank you. Yeah, as y'all can see, there's like so many worm things going on, and this doesn't even touch the centipedes and millipedes, which fit into arthropods. So we haven't even gotten to all of the wormy-like things. But yes, a couple things that are just kind of weird with this. When they talk about the dorsally ventrally flattened for the flatworms, think that just means they're flattened such that they only have a dorsal like a back and a ventral side like a front. So they're just saying they're like pancakes. The protonephridia, it's like ciliated tubes for the GI tract. So flatworms basically just have a tube going through it with a bunch of cilia that push all of the food out of it, and that's what's going on with that. The eye spots aren't like our eyes; they're just sensitive to light. They're not actually like seeing things. And then the flatworms, which includes like planarians and tapeworms, and those annelids are all lophophorates, fitting in that Lophotrochozoa, I think. Yeah, however you say that super ugly long one. And then, nematodes are the one that are different. And then remember those Trichina spiralis? It's a type of nematode that's found in uncooked pork that can cause a pretty lethal disease depending on how it takes off. So that one seemed to be the special red highlighted and italicized disease or infection for that one. So fun times. All right, number 5. Can a species only have female members? What? How do they reproduce? Did anyone get 5? Yes, Jordan.
Yeah, so they're rotifers, which is when females produce like other females through, I think it's like pathogenesis,
Parthenogenesis.
which basically just means like through an unfertilized egg.
Yeah, exactly. Somehow they're just able to reproduce without fertilization, so they just pop out an unfertilized egg, and that happens. Cool. Thank you, Jordan. Number 6. What are the basic components of, yes, mollusks and their 4 subclasses? Oh, mollusks. Would anyone like to take a stab at number 6? They're a shell of a lot of fun.
I can.
Okay. Sydney.
So I said, well, first of all, there's snails, slugs, oysters, clams, octopuses, and squids. And then they're made up of calcium carbonate shells. And then they have a muscular foot, a visceral mass, and a mantle. And then they have the mantle cavity and a strap like radula. And then like the 4 subclasses are like Polyplecophora, which just means like 8 dorsal plates, and then Gastropoda, which is like a single spiraled shell, Bivalvia, which is a shell in 2 halves because like the bi is 2, and then Cephalopoda is like beak-like jaws surrounded by tentacles.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, the mollusks are a fun group. They've got some weird things going on. The mantle thing, that you'll see how like they usually draw it with the snail. The mantle is just the part that excretes the calcium carbonate shell. So for kind of like the mantle's always drawn kind of weird, it's because it's just excreting that. Do any of y'all know where the visceral mass would be located?
Just everywhere.
It's just
Yeah.
organs, right?
Yeah, think of like your viscera. People talk about like their viscera spilled out if you got a really bad laceration. It's like all of your intestines. So it's like a mass kind of things on the inside. And the muscular foot, it's not as obvious as like a human foot, but it's really just the whole bottom of it is this one big lump of muscle, and it can wiggle around in different ways. So think about a snail like crawling forwards. That would be the muscular foot. And then all of these change a ton depending on what the thing actually does. And then also a radula, yeah, it's just like a tongue with a bunch of spikes on it. And imagine if you had to walk around like campus, but you licked at the ground and scraped food off of it, and then you ate it. That's what the radula does, which is pretty gross, but they're able to scrape up somehow enough food to get by. And then, yeah, as Sydney was saying, a lot of these, you can kind of break it down to like the name. So Polyplecophora, poly means many, placo, think of like a wall or a defense or something. Those are the one with like many body plates, like 8 plates of armor, Polyplecophora. Gastropoda, gastro for stomach, poda for foot. Literally, it means like stomach foot. So the snails, it looks like they're belly down and their stomach is actually just a foot. And that's where gastropoda comes from. Bivalvia, yeah, Sydney explained really well. It's just 2 shells, 2 valves. And then cephalopoda are kind of the weird ones. Cephalo means like head and poda means foot. So an octopus is kind of a good example. It's literally just like the head of it, and then it has tentacles. It doesn't really have like a body or anything else. And hidden deep within that tentacle is the beak that it uses to eat stuff. Yes. Any questions on 6?
Where's the mantle cavity? Is it the mouth or is it the back?
The mantle's typically like on the back of it, because the mantle is the part that's excreting that calcium carbonate shell.
Oh, the mantle cavity?
The mantle or the mantle cavity?
The mantle cavity, not the, yeah, the mantle cavity.
Let me look up an image of it. Whoops.
I think she just said that it was just a water-filled mantle cavity.
Is that just like the general space? If you were thinking of it like this, is that just like the area in it, the mantle cavity?
Yeah, I think it's just the space, yeah, kind of in between. Looks like the shell and the mouth. But it's not super important. What's more important is the mantle itself and the whole shell part of it.
Okay.
But good question. All right, hopping along to number 7. Who are the ecdysozoans? What a fun word. And what are their features? Did any of y'all get to 7? Will, thank you.
Okay, so ecdysozoans, basically the two main phyla of those that we learned about were nematodes and arthropods. And so we talked about nematodes earlier. They're roundworms, and they're pseudo-coelomates, or are they coelomates? I can't remember.
I don't remember. Do any of y'all remember? Do nematodes have a true coelom?
Remember.
I think
Pretty
they're
sure
pseudo.
Yeah.
Pseudo.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
And so we kind of like went over nematodes already earlier. So I guess not focus too much on that, but like how we said earlier, it's like they're roundworms. They can be parasites. They're used for research and all that stuff. So the big part of this is arthropods, and arthropods have like a lot of different kinds of species. They have the crustaceans, the myriapods, and the
Chelicerae
wait, what?
and the chelicerae.
Yeah, and the chelicerates. And so the big thing about arthropods and their success is they have jointed appendages, and another thing they have is they have an exoskeleton, and they basically, I think it's molting, where they secrete that exoskeleton as they get bigger. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then so going into like the different kinds, chelicerates, how do you say it?
Chelicerates.
Chelicerates. So those include like spiders, and I think scorpions. They have two appendages that are for feeding, called, and that's how they get their name, chelicerae. And then they also have what are called pedipalps, which are used to like draw in prey. And so yeah, those include arachnids, which is spiders, obviously. And then so yeah, and then myriapods has millipedes and centipedes, which is basically the main difference is that millipedes have two sets of legs per segment, and centipedes have one set of legs. And then crustaceans, those that's crabs, lobsters, shrimp, and all that, and they also have that shell that they secrete, and they have their appendages like change as they go throughout the body. So they have feeding appendages, and they have like their claws up front, and then it goes to more of like walking legs in the back. And then later it gets to, insects are arthropods, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you get to insects, and they also go through the main thing it focuses on insects is like metamorphosis, and the difference between incomplete and complete metamorphosis. And so incomplete metamorphosis would be like the juvenile looks like the adult, but is sexually immature and gains certain characteristics over time as they mature. And then complete metamorphosis is when it's like you have a larval stage, and it then it goes through metamorphosis and becomes an adult. And so that's usually the main thing they discuss with insects.
Yeah. Sweet. And what's the classic like example of something that goes through complete metamorphosis?
Butterfly.
Butterflies. Yeah, because they have the whole caterpillar stage, which is obviously not a butterfly, and then the whole cocoon thing, and then the butterfly, which is the butterfly. Sweet. Thank you, Will. Yeah, there is so much going on with arthropods. They're the most diverse and abundant animals on Earth. I don't even know how many, billions or trillions of them there are. Probably trillions, maybe quadrillions. There's so many of them. They're all over the place. It's kind of that magic combo of segmented body, the hard exoskeleton. And what is their exoskeleton made out of?
Oh, chitin.
Yes, good old chitin keeps it nice and strong. That's what's giving them their strength and all the appendage and stuff. Okay, thank you, Will. We're gonna keep on rolling. I know that's a lot. I know it's a bunch of stuff to keep track of, but it's all in the PowerPoints too, in case you're not able to get anything down. Go through it. Bless you.
Sorry.
Number 9, describe the deuterostomia clade. How are they different from the other bilaterians? Who had 9? Or who was able to get to 9, I should say. Anyone?
I got to 9. I can do it.
Okay.
So they have, they're deuterostomes, which, like, if you think of like the chart comparing protostomes and deuterostomes, they have those same features. So they have radial cleavage, and they have the formation of an anus from the blastopore. And then they include 2 main groups. It's the echinoderms, which are characterized by a thin epidermis, and then they have chordates, which is like the next chapter, and they're bilateral and coelomates.
Nice. Yes. And who is our favorite cartoon echinoderm?
Patrick.
Patrick! Yeah, Patrick the starfish. He's an echinoderm. Okay, awesome. And as Jenna mentioned, they are deuterostomes, which means the fun of radial cleavage and forming an anus first, which is different from the Lophotrochozoa and the Ecdysozoa. Those would, if they're not deuterostomes, what are they going to be? Protostomes, which means, do they develop a mouth or an anus first?
A mouth.
A mouth. And they have what kind of cleavage?
Spiral cleavage.
They have, sorry, I think I might have said this wrong earlier. Protostomes have radial cleavage. What kind of cleavage do deuterostomes have? I'm sorry. Deuterostomes have radial cleavage. Protostomes have spiral cleavage. Sorry. And the spiral cleavage, remember, is where the protostomes, it's like they replicate and then everything looks kind of like twisted. And that's what it looks like, a spiral. Deuterostomes, radial, protostomes, spiral. Sorry about that. And then, let me think, other things. What kind of symmetry do echinoderms have?
Bilateral.
That's what would make sense since they're in the clade of bilaterians. But technically, echinoderms are more radially symmetric. Because if you think about it, it's like they're growing from one point outwards with their points. And so they're technically radially symmetric instead of bilaterally symmetric, which is doesn't make sense because of their classification and because you can't really cut it. Like if you cut it across the middle, you'll get like 3 things on one side and 2 on the other. But generally speaking, it's more radial, which is just weird, but that's what it is. Okay, what do you know? 7:15 and we're already done with activity 1. What questions do y'all have on activity 1 things?
Or I think it was annelids, or however you say that, or maybe it was nematoda. Which one was somebody said they had a different name we were supposed to know besides trichinosis. Does anybody know what the other name was?
Annelids are a type of lophophorate. Nematodes are a type of ecdysozoans. Oh, nematodes are also called roundworms.
Roundworms, okay. And then there was spiralis trilosis, I think is how you say it. And then there was one other one that somebody said, but I don't know what this is.
Oh, Trichinella spiralis. Yeah, that's a type of nematode. The other one, I don't remember. If anyone else, that was the one that was red and I think italicized. So like.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, it's always helpful to know all of them, but.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if y'all don't have any questions, we can jump back. We'll do breakout rooms again till probably about 7:30, maybe a little bit after that. And then we'll go over activity 2. Hopefully that'll leave us with a little bit of room to go over any sort of general questions that y'all might have for me or whatever. And then you can go to Katie's office hours if you have more questions after that. That sound good?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So I remember I think the true tissue clade, eumetozoas, they have like a 3-layer tissue. So what do the porifera have?
What kind of tissues did the porifera have?
They don't.
They don't. They don't have any sort of tissue. Whereas the eumetozoa have true tissues, but they just have tissues because porifera aren't recognized as having tissues. But then the tissues that they have can either be 2-layered or 3-layered. But that was more, I think, 32, chapter 32, 31, something like that. But thank you, Hulk Hogan, for asking. All right, cool. I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording thing for now. All right, the recording is back, and we are going to rock and roll through activity 2, and then after that, we'll come back and just answer whatever other questions y'all have. So, number 10, what are some features of all chordates? Hulk Hogan, your thing is highlighted. What did you have for 10?
They have a notochord, which is like a flexible cartilage cord that protects the nerve going down their dorsal side, I think. And they have a dorsal hollow nerve cord, pharyngeal slits or clefts, which I think are like pretty much gills. They're muscular, and they have a post-anal tail, and they do suspension feeding, like capturing food suspended in the water.
Yeah, and I think the muscular goes with the post-anal tail, which is really just a fancy way of saying most tails that you've seen. Like think of a lizard's tail, the tail that happens after its anus. I don't know of many tails that aren't post-anal, but yes. And then the notochord, it's like a structural thing. We'll get into this later about notochords versus vertebrae, but I want to spoil it. And then yes, dorsal nerve cord. And dorsal, just think dorsal's like your back, so it's like your nerve cord going along your back. Sweet, thank you, Hulk. Number 11, what are the differences between cephalochordata and urochordata? Yes.
I can go.
Oh, sorry.
Cephalochordata, they're marine suspension feeders. They feed on plankton, and they make up the land slits. Land slits are named for their blade-like shape, and they eat with the cirri, which is kind of like the mouth at the front. And then the urochordata make up the tunicates, and the tunicates are more closely related to other chordates than the land slits. Also, metamorphosis for them involves the reabsorption of the tail and notochord, and they draw in water through the siphon, which filters the food particle and is most apparent in the larval stage.
Nice, yes, thank you, Sam. Yeah, they have there's kind of two different ways to do filter feeding. You can have the siphons like the urochordates where they kind of suck stuff in. They think of like siphoning in something. And then there's also like, I think it's blue whales where they have like the grill of teeth and they kind of just drag through stuff. Or I guess sponges too. Anyway, yes. So the land slits would be the cephalochordata and the urochordata tunicates. And yeah, as Sam was mentioning, it's kind of important to know what things are retained from the like the chordate body plan, because a lot of organisms will have all the features of chordates, but only in a stage of development. So like when you think of humans, if you've ever seen like a very young human or person or fetus where it's like a week old or like 2 weeks, you're like, why does it look like a small alien? You know, like it has a little tail, it looks like it has gills. Well, those are all the features of chordates. It has a post-anal tail, it has pharyngeal slits, it has a notochord at the start. But all of those things are usually gotten rid of as it grows into adulthood. And so some groups will maintain some features, other groups will maintain none of them, but they're present at some point in the organism's life cycle, and so that's why they can still be like classified as the chordates, even if it doesn't show up in the adult form. Neat. Thank you, Sam. Number 12, are chordates and vertebrates the same thing? If not, what are the distinguishing features?
I can do this one.
Okay.
So no, chordates and vertebrates are not the same thing. This was kind of something similar to what you said on the review PowerPoint, but all vertebrates are chordates, but not all chordates are vertebrates. And so the characteristics that define vertebrates, they have 2 or more Hox genes, which is just like the developmental genes, which are highly conserved, so they're super important. And then they have vertebrae. And then they also have a neural crest rather than like the notochord and nerve cord.
Nice. Yeah, and it's a good distinction of all vertebrates are chordates, not all chordates are vertebrates. Vertebrates are like a special category within chordates. However, most of the chordates that you think of happen to be vertebrates, like mammals and things like that. But cool. Thank you, Jen. I think that's all that one. Number 13, how are chondrithians different from actinopterygi? 5 bonus points if you have any idea how to actually say those. Kate, did you have this one?
Actinopterygi.
Okay, so chondrithians, however you say it, are like they're like sharks and rays. They're the biggest and most successful predator in the ocean that's a vertebrate. Their skeleton is mostly cartilage. They have dorsal and pelvic and pectoral fins. They're carnivores and they have acute senses. And then actinopterygi are ray-finned fish. They have an ossified skeleton. They have gills and lungs. They have swim bladders, which helps with like the buoyancy, so like the pressures are equal with like the water in their blood. Is that right? I think I read something in the textbook like that.
Let's see. Yeah, those are the ones with the swim bladder.
Okay, and then they also have scales that are like more flattened and bony, and like the sharks and rays are like tooth-like.
Yeah, they're extra sharp, which is why you don't want to pet a shark from like the wrong way up, or it'll like cheese grater your hand, which is not fun. But yes, thank you, Kate.
Question.
Yeah.
So for the one that starts with CH, so that one, and there's also one that's gnathosaurs or whatever, like the GNA, like that's also sharks.
Gnathosomes?
Yeah. Do all the characteristics of gnathosomes also go under like these ones as well, like the CH, or like are they 2 separate things? Because they're both sharks, kind of, right?
The gnathosomes were like the first things to have jaws with teeth. So that would like include like, chondrithocytes, the actinopterygi or whatever. And all of those things. So like sharks, amphibians, reptiles, mammals. But they give you that one picture in the PowerPoint, which looks very much like some weird special prehistoric jank thing, but technically they all fit in it. And so one of the groups was saying, think of like gnathosomes as like gnashing your teeth because you have a jaw.
Got it.
So I'm stealing that from someone, but that was a good memory thing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What was the difference between oviparous and oviviparous?
Oh, perfect. We're just I gotta ask that. So who would like to? You're egging the question on. You just getting yoked with all the puns that I seem to come. Who would like to do 14? Yes, Haley. Thank you.
So the oviparous, however you pronounce it, is basically that the eggs are hatched outside of the mom. So like they're planted somewhere and then they'll hatch. The The second one that has 2 O's and 2 I's has,
Oviviparous.
I don't want to pronounce these, I'm going to get them wrong. But they have eggs in the oviduct, and as soon as they're born, they're like, or after they hatch, they're like, go out of the mother's uterus. And then the viviparous are the young. Basically, it's like what we do, like elephants. It stays in the uterus, gets all the nutrients it needs until it's fully grown, or like can be birthed and like live on its own, and then you got something that's living.
Yeah. Yeah. The ovoviviparous are weird. Kind of like you were saying, Haley, they have the oviparous, which are like your typical, like, think of a bird laying an egg. It lays the egg, later the egg hatches. On the other side, you have the viviparous, which are like us, where you're just born alive. There's not really eggs going on. Ignore the whole like egg from a ovary. That's not exactly what we're talking about. The ovoviviparous are weird because they're like, they have an egg, but just the egg is think of laying the egg within a uterus. So it develops in the egg, in the uterus, and then the egg hatches. So it's like the thing is born into the uterus, and then later it's birthed out of the uterus into the rest of the world. So there's kind of like 2 birth things. What were you saying, Fire?
Do you have an example? Or like, I'm sure there's some
sharks.
like top of your head. Okay.
So sharks are like, they have eggs, but then they're hatched within their womb. And that's why you can hear about like sharks eating, I think it's sharks that eat other sharks in the womb, because they're first eggs and then they hatch and then they're swimming around in mom's uterus or some weird mess like that. And then they're actually birthed out of the shark later. Yeah, it's weird. There are actually a couple, I want to say a couple reptiles that do it too. It's not as weird and straightforward as you'd think. And there are actually mammals that lay eggs too, which a lot of y'all probably already know that, but all of this is much more blurry than the cute, like, mammals have babies, reptiles and amphibians lay eggs. Like, it's a bit messier, but that's biology. What other questions do y'all have on 14 and all the egg stuff? All right, cool. We will jump on to 15. What's the deal with tetrapods? Explain what you can. Who would like to talk about our new friend, Tikdalacker? Tackalacker, however you say that name. Thank you, Lauren.
Me or?
Sure, you went first. That works.
Okay, so tetrapods have 4 feet with limbs and digits. The pelvic girdle is fused to the backbone, and pharyngeal slits are only present during embryological development, and then they have ears for detecting airborne sounds.
Boom. Perfect. Yeah, and tetrapods are like a lot of the vertebrates that you think of. Tetra for pod, meaning foot. So, yeah, gators, mammals, all those fun critters. Thank you, Lauren. Number 16, describe amphibians. Oh, I didn't give y'all much direction there, but yep, describe amphibians. Who would like to do 16?
I can do it.
Okay, thanks, Jenna.
So the main thing about amphibians is that they are aquatic larvae, and then they go through metamorphosis and they change into terrestrial adults. So that's like an example of like complete. And then there are 3 general like characterizations. So there's Urodela, and that means tailed ones. So an example of that is a salamander. And then an Anura, which is tailless ones, which is frogs. If you think of frogs, like they still have the legs, but they don't have the tail. And then Apoda is legless ones, and Caecilians, there's an example of that. They look like worms, but they're not worms. They're amphibians. So.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Jenna. And real quick, yeah, those 3 categories, I feel like that's definitely worth paying attention to, even though they're kind of weird. And some of y'all probably already know this, but a lot of times in old language, if you see like an A at the front, it means without. So like the apoda is like without pods or without feet or legs. So that's where you get the legless ones that look like worms. Or a neura is like a without neura I think it means tail, so it's like without tail. So if the breakdown helps with figure out what's what, then go for it. But yep, those are pretty much our amphibian friends. 2 more. All right, we're almost there. Number 17, describe reptiles.
I'll do it.
Okay, thanks, Lauren.
So reptiles consist of tuataras, lizards, birds, turtles, snakes, crocodiles, and I just said birds. They have a shelled amniotic egg, and most reptiles are ectotherms, except birds are endotherms. And then reptiles consist of diapsids, and diapsids consist of lepidosaurs and archosaurs. And lepidosaurs are lizard-like, and then archosaurs are like turtles, crocs, and birds. And then birds are adapted to flight because they have keratin feathers and weight-saving adaptations such as lack of urinary bladder, air sacs, and hollow bones.
Boom. Nice. Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, reptiles are a weird bunch. Especially the fact that birds are reptiles. I don't know about any of y'all, that kind of blows my mind that birds are more related to snakes than to us. That's kind of nuts. A couple other weird things too with the snakes. So snakes fall within the lepidosaurs, but they're legless lepidosaurs, and they have like the chemical sensors, heat detecting organs. Like there's that one image of a snake that can basically do like heat radiation sort of sensing, and that's how it can see like a mouse, even if it's dark. And then they also have the venoms, the loosely attached jawbones, elastic skin, which allows them to open up their mouth. And then, yeah, one really good thing that Lauren brought up is the whole ectotherm endotherm, which we may have covered last semester. But just for review's sake, what is an ectotherm? Where does it get its energy or heat from?
The outside.
Ectotherm? You go ahead.
I just said like from an outside source, like they're cold-blooded.
Exactly, yeah. They're cold-blooded in the sense of like they don't have any way to heat their blood. So naturally, if you just leave them on their own in a cool place, they'll get cold. Whereas warm-blooded animals, like us, also called endotherms, their heat comes from the inside. So endo from the inside, therm, heat. So we make our own heat, or birds make their own heat to stay warm, whereas ectotherms have to move to a warm area in order to heat up. Neat. All right. Number 18. Yes, we finally reached it after like 2.5 months or 2 months of the semester. We made it to mammals. Woo! What probably most of y'all are waiting for. So we have a singular question on it. So would anyone like to explain number 18? Thank you, Sophia.
So mammals have mammary glands. They have hair and a fat layer under the skin. They do the process of endothermy, and they have high metabolic rate. They have efficient respiratory and circulatory systems, a large brain to body size ratio, extensive parental care of young, differentiated teeth, and they also have a single hole in the skull behind the eye socket.
And what is that single hole for?
For the ear.
Yeah, it's kind of an unusual feature way of describing it, but yeah, the hole behind the eye socket is like your ear hole. And then also on the slides it mentions mastication. That's just a fancy term for chewing. So there's certain muscles of mastication or certain muscles of chewing attach right next to that spot. There's a couple cool ligaments, like there's one that keeps your jaw from protruding too far forward. Sweet, thank you, Sophia. Jordan, what are the 3 categories of mammals? Oh, I think you're on mute still. Thanks, sorry.
Marsupials. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it starts with like an E and then like
Eutherians and yeah.
And then
Monotremes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, monotremes. Okay. And then some monotremes lay eggs and they like black nipples. So when they like give their offspring nutrients, they actually feed through their mom's like belly buttons, I guess, which is weird. And then marsupials complete their development or embryonic development while nursing. So they're usually held in like a kind of sort of like placental sac in the mom's like stomach thing. Mm-hmm. And then eutherms complete embryonic development within the uterus. So like elephants.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you, Jordan. Yeah. So monotremes, who's y'all's favorite cartoon monotreme?
Harry the platypus.
Harry the platypus. Yes. Platypi are monotremes. So they lay eggs, which doesn't really seem to make much sense for animals. They also, their whole process of lactation is kind of unusual. It looks kind of like, I'm going to see if I can find a photo. It looks kind of like they're just almost sweating out the milk because it just kind of drips on their belly. If I can find a good photo later, I'll share with y'all. But yeah, they're kind of funny. Marsupials, think of kangaroos. They're like developing in their pouch. And then eutherians, that would be us. That's more like typical mammal or what you'd think of in terms of developing within a uterus. Not that monotremes or marsupials are any less of mammals, just they're less common. Boom. All right, so we finished the worksheet with the whole 2 minutes to spare. So awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming, for answering all the questions. I hope this was helpful. Feel free to hang out afterwards if y'all have some questions. Tomorrow, hopefully after the test is all over, it'll be like at 9. We're going to go through and we'll talk about classes and scheduling, and especially if y'all have questions about what I do with pass-fail things, I'll be on from 9 until pretty much whenever y'all need, and we'll talk through stuff then. So hopefully it'll be after the test, so you won't have any study worries, but that way it'll be early enough that y'all can have an idea of what to do, because I think you guys are signing up in like a week or 2 or something like that.
I signed up on the 21st.
Okay, perfect. So it'll be enough time to hopefully look at schedules and think about all of that, all those fun shenanigans. So cool. All right. Well, thanks so much for coming. Feel free to hop out if you're just tired of hearing my voice, or if you want to go to Katie's office hours, and then I'll hang around if anyone has other questions. So thanks again for coming, y'all.
Thanks,
Bye.
Liam.
Thank you.
Bye.